Hey everyone! If you're ready for a story full of drama, resilience, and unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a chapter. Hit that like button if you're hooked, and drop a comment below, because your thoughts matter and I love hearing from you. Let's dive in. Claire Evans had never imagined that saving someone's life could break her own. The fluorescent lights above her hospital bed cast a sterile glow, reflecting off the pale blue walls and chrome fixtures of the private recovery room. She'd insisted Ryan not spend extra money on a fancy suite. He'd done it anyway. "You deserve the best," he had said, kissing her forehead with a tenderness that now felt almost artificial. That was 10 days ago. Now the room felt like a waiting room for pain. Physical, emotional, all of it blurred together. Her stitches itched. Her lower back ached. And Ryan hadn't shown up since the third day. At first, Claire had made excuses for him. Work emergencies, meetings, stress. It's probably hard for him too, she told herself, ignoring how each excuse hollowed her out a little more. The texts had become shorter. The phone calls more robotic. Yesterday he didn't call at all. The nurses asked about him with kind eyes and forced smiles. Claire lied through hers. "He's just busy," she would say, then shift the conversation to the weather or ask for another blanket. But in truth, she had begun to feel it deep in her chest. Something was wrong. Not just physically but foundationally. 1 year earlier, they had met in line at a coffee shop downtown, both impatient, both late. Claire had made a sarcastic comment about the slow service. Ryan had laughed and bought her coffee. 3 years later, they were married in a small vineyard in Napa Valley, surrounded by close friends and family. Ryan was ambitious. CEO of a tech startup that had recently landed series of funding. Claire, a marketing strategist, had helped him craft his pitch decks, shape the company's voice, and quietly rewrite most of his public speeches. Their life wasn't perfect, but it was solid, or so she thought. Sure, there were arguments. Ryan worked late, sometimes drank too much at networking events, and occasionally went silent for entire weekends under the guise of unplugging. Still, Claire believed in them. She believed. 10 days post-surgery. The hospital discharged her in the afternoon. Ryan wasn't there to pick her up. Instead, a black car waited outside with a driver she didn't recognize. Her suitcase was already in the trunk. Claire stared at the empty passenger seat beside her, holding back tears as the driver politely asked, "Ms. Evans?" "Yes," she said, her voice barely audible. The ride home was quiet. Claire stared out the window, watching the city rush by. Couples crossed streets hand in hand. A father lifted his child onto his shoulders near a hot dog stand. Life moved forward. When she arrived at their condo, she paused at the door, key trembling in her hand. Inside, nothing had changed. Neat, clean, soulless. And Ryan was waiting. He stood near the kitchen island, dressed too formally for a casual evening. Button-down shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled up, posture stiff. Claire's heart raced, thinking maybe this was it. The overdue apology, the reason for the silence. But then he opened his mouth. "Claire, we need to talk. A divorce." She didn't feel the floor go out from under her. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Not right away. Ryan's voice was calm, practiced, like he was reading from a script. "I've been unhappy for a long time. I didn't know how to say it before, but we're not the same people anymore." Claire stared at him, stunned. "You, what are you talking about? I want a divorce." The words didn't sound real. Not in that kitchen. Not so soon after she'd given him a kidney. Not when the surgical tape was still on her side and her body was still adjusting to functioning with one less organ. She couldn't breathe. "After everything. After this," she whispered, pressing a hand to her abdomen. Ryan looked down, ashamed or just avoiding confrontation. She couldn't tell. "I didn't ask you to do it," he said. "I appreciated it. You do. But I can't stay in a marriage just because someone saved my life." The room spun. Claire gripped the counter for balance. He had already packed a suitcase. Already booked a hotel. The paperwork was drawn up. He left her with the condo, the car, and some financial breathing room in the joint account. "I don't want to fight," he said. "Let's make this as easy as possible." "Easy." Claire said nothing as the door closed behind him. That night, she sat on the floor of their walk-in closet, surrounded by his empty hangers and the scent of his cologne still lingering in the air. Her hand drifted to her side to the healing scar. The bandage was stiff, soaked with old antiseptic and betrayal. How could someone leave you after you gave them a piece of your body? How could love disappear so quietly? She didn't sleep. She didn't cry. She just sat there, realizing that her life, her plans, her career, her health, her marriage, had been rerouted without warning. And somewhere in the silence, something inside her shifted. Not rage. Not yet. But clarity. 2 weeks had passed since Ryan walked out of their condo, and the silence had become its own kind of noise. Claire spent the first 3 days in a fog. She barely ate. Showered only when the physical discomfort became unavoidable. The world outside kept turning. Deliveries still arrived at the door, spam calls still rang twice then disappeared, and the neighbors still took their dog on 8 a.m. walks. But inside the condo, time crawled. Her inbox filled with auto-replies from the HR firm she freelanced with. "Hope you're healing well, Claire. Let us know when you're ready to take on new projects." She wasn't ready. Not professionally. Not emotionally. Not physically. But then something shifted. On the morning of the 14th day, Claire stood in front of the bathroom mirror, pulling back the tape to expose the scar on her abdomen. It was pink, slightly swollen but healing. The pain had dulled. It was tolerable now. And as she studied the wound, a single thought surfaced, stubborn and sharp. He walked away clean. Not just emotionally. Legally. Financially. Socially. Ryan had abandoned her after a life-altering surgery, but from the outside, he looked like the reasonable one. The CEO who amicably separated from his wife and offered her the condo, the car, and a generous settlement. That morning she made herself coffee, black, no sugar, and sat down at her desk. Not to cry. Not to reminisce. But to open a folder called Evans Tech Foundation. The past re-examined. It wasn't just pillow talk. Claire had been part of Ryan's company from the very beginning. They used to work side by side on their laptops at the kitchen table, ordering Thai food while brainstorming brand names. She wrote his first pitch deck, designed the company's logo, built out the messaging strategy, crafted early investor emails. When he rehearsed his presentations, she coached him on tone and pacing. She hadn't asked for credit. It was their shared dream. But somewhere around Series A, things changed. Ryan started hiring full-time staff. He brought in a branding agency, then a PR firm. Claire was edged out, not rudely but systematically. "We need a more experienced voice now," he had said, as if she hadn't been the one shaping that voice for 3 years. Still, she supported him. She loved him. She gave him a kidney. Now all of it, the startup, the brand, the success, existed without her. Or so he thought. Digging deeper, Claire began pulling files from her cloud storage. She still had old drafts of investor decks, embedded with her comments. She still had the login to the original Google Workspace account, the one they used before switching to a corporate domain. There were receipts, timestamps, email threads, revision histories. She downloaded everything. By the end of the day, she had over 200 files organized into folders. Slide decks, early logos, content calendars, partnership proposals, many of which Ryan had pitched as his own work. And there it was, tucked in an old email chain from 2 years ago, a partnership document she co-wrote that led to their first major funding round. Her initials were all over the track changes. Her strategy section remained unchanged in the final presentation. He had built his empire on her invisible labor. The lawyer. The next day, Claire booked a consultation with an attorney in Westwood. Nicole Chu. Highly recommended, discreet, and a specialist in intellectual property and startup equity law. Nicole was sharp-eyed and even sharper in conversation. She didn't blink once while reviewing the thick folder Claire laid in front of her. "Do you have proof of contribution?" she asked, flipping through documents. "I have everything," Claire said. "But I never signed anything. No formal contract. I wasn't on payroll. I worked as a spouse, not a consultant." Nicole tilted her head. "You weren't compensated. There are no NDAs. And you can prove that some of your work was foundational to the company's early success." "Yes." Nicole smiled, the kind of smile that came just before the beginning of a very smart plan. "Then we may have a case." Claire leaned forward. "I'm not looking for a settlement. What are you looking for?" He paused. Then, "I want control. Partial. Temporary. Something that leaves a dent." Nicole nodded slowly. "Then we don't go straight for money. We go for influence. Let's find out what he's hiding first." The first thread. Nicole started with a forensic accountant. Within days, they uncovered that Ryan had transferred a portion of company funds into a side account registered under a different LLC, one not listed in the company's official filings. Claire's stomach dropped. It wasn't illegal, not yet, but it hinted at mismanagement, possibly even fraud. Then came the discovery that the early seed money had been invested based on pitch materials that included Claire's intellectual work, without her name or permission. Now she had leverage. And in the middle of the night, as Claire sat in her dark living room, scrolling through old photos of her and Ryan at the startup's launch party, she whispered to herself, "You took everything. Now I take it back." Claire never believed in revenge. Not in the movie sense, anyway. But this wasn't about destroying someone. This was about balance. About correction. About reclaiming what was hers. The condo felt different now. Not quieter but focused. Her days began early. Coffee at 6 a.m., a call with Nicole by 7:30, and then hours of combing through emails, receipts, Slack screenshots, and cloud backups. The heartbreak hadn't disappeared, but it had shape now. Purpose. It was no longer a wound she carried, it was fuel. And with each document, each proof of contribution she unearthed, Claire began to feel something dangerous building beneath the surface. Confidence. A history of overlap. Ryan's company EvTech had grown quickly. Too quickly if you asked Nicole. From 3 guys in a WeWork office to 30 full-time staff in under 2 years. Claire remembered the excitement, the late-night pacing, the near panic when payroll hit before the first client payment cleared. She had lived all of that alongside Ryan. Back then they used joint cards for business expenses. Claire was the one managing invoices while Ryan focused on meetings. They even used her name on early lease documents for the startup's first office, back when Ryan's credit still had some unpaid student debt dragging it down. She wasn't just involved, she was essential. So why had she never asked for anything official? Because she thought marriage was protection enough. That building a future together meant not needing separate legal identities. And now she knew better. Nicole's strategy. "Do you want to go public?" Nicole asked one morning, sipping her green tea during a video call. "No," Claire answered quickly. "Not yet. I want him to feel it before anyone else does." Nicole smirked. "Then we start where it hurts most, the board." Ryan's company had 3 board members besides himself, 2 early investors, and a former mentor who acted as an advisor. Nicole pulled their names, ran background checks, and drafted an anonymous legal inquiry asking if they were aware that early branding, messaging, and financial projections were built on material taken without formal consent or attribution. It wasn't a direct threat, but it was a signal. By the end of the week, Ryan's attorney had called Nicole. "There's no need to escalate. Let's talk," he said. Nicole responded coolly. "We'll send a list of requests by Monday." Claire didn't expect it to work that fast. But weakness has a smell, and Ryan reeked of it now. Panicking not because she wanted justice, but because she had leverage. The confrontation happened by accident. Claire was walking out of Nicole's office building in Century City when she saw him. Ryan, leaning against the hood of his car, phone in hand, brow furrowed. He looked tired, unshaven. The confident CEO armor stripped away. When he saw her, he stiffened. "Claire." She didn't respond. "I didn't know you'd," he began, but she walked right past him. "Claire," he said again, firmer. "Can we talk?" She stopped, turned, looked at him like he was someone else entirely, which she realized he was. "I gave you a kidney," she said calmly. "And you gave me an empty apartment and a settlement check." His jaw tightened. "You think this is about money," she continued. "You think I want revenge." "I don't know what you want," he said. "I just want this to go away." She laughed. It was short and sharp. "You built something on top of me. And now you don't get to pretend I wasn't the foundation." Ryan looked around as if checking for cameras. "You're going to ruin everything." "I'm going to correct everything," she replied and walked away. The leverage grows. Claire and Nicole drafted a formal request, a review of all materials produced in the company's first 18 months, with full disclosure of contribution, intellectual property, and use of joint marital funds in company development. Attached were 37 pages of annotated evidence. Ryan's attorney tried to stall. She was his wife. She was supporting him. Nicole countered. She was unpaid labor and a strategic contributor. And now she's a shareholder. Retroactively or legally, your call. The next week, Nicole received an offer. 5% equity vested immediately. A seat at the table in an advisory role. No PR, no press. Just silence in exchange for acknowledgement and ownership. Nicole asked Claire if she wanted to counter. Claire shook her head. "Not yet. Let them get comfortable. Let them think this is over." Because it wasn't. Rebuilding. Claire didn't want to be part of his company. She wanted to build her own. With her portion of the settlement and new equity, she incorporated a firm under her name. E2 Strategies, Evans 2.0. A consultancy focused on brand positioning for early-stage startups led by underrepresented founders, especially women. Within 3 weeks, she had her first client. Within 5, 2 more. And in the background, she continued collecting. Not just legal leverage, but influence. Word was spreading. Quietly. Strategically. About the woman who had donated a kidney and taken back a company. The morning light in Los Angeles was harsh. Brilliant, clinical, almost too clean. Claire stood on the balcony of her condo, a steaming mug of black coffee in her hand, watching the traffic snake its way through Wilshire. She was no longer recovering. Not physically, not emotionally. At least, not in a way that looked like stillness. She was moving again. E2 Strategies had secured 4 clients in 6 weeks. One of them, an edtech startup led by a female founder fresh out of Stanford, had just closed their seed round, crediting Claire's pitch refinement and investor strategy for the breakthrough. The gratitude was genuine. So was the invoice. But Claire wasn't thinking about her clients that morning. She was thinking about a name she'd found in a spreadsheet buried inside one of Ryan's early investor presentations. A name that didn't make sense at the time. Marlowe Interactive, LLC. It had been listed as a strategic partner, in the earliest stage of Evteca's growth, supposedly responsible for UX testing and beta feedback. Claire knew every inch of those beta documents. She wrote most of them. But she'd never worked with anyone named Marlowe, never even heard the name until last week. So she followed the trail. Digging again. Nicole introduced Claire to a private investigator she trusted. His name was Samir Goyal, ex-cybercrime, meticulous, expensive. Claire sent him a retainer without blinking. Marlowe Interactive LLC, she told him. "I need to know who owns it. And why it's listed in a 2020 pitch deck that predates Evteca's seed funding." Within 3 days, Samir had an answer. "Marlowe Interactive," he said, "is a shell." Claire leaned forward. "Owned by Graham Belsky." She blinked. "Ryan's best friend from college." Samir nodded. "Filed in Delaware. No real office. No employees. Just a name on a digital mailbox. But it received 2 direct payments from Evtec in 2021, totaling $183,000. Claire's heart thudded. For UX consulting that never happened, she said. Samir shrugged. Possibly. Or for something they didn't want to list on the books. Either way, it's dirty. Claire sat back in her chair, the implications unraveling fast. Ryan hadn't just abandoned her. He had diverted funds. Possibly to friends. Possibly to cover favors. And he'd buried it inside made-up partnerships and pass-through LLCs. She thought she'd already seen the worst of him. She was wrong. The offer. 2 days later, Claire received an email from Ryan's attorney. Short. Formal. Mr. Evans is interested in a private resolution regarding intellectual property and partnership contribution. He is prepared to extend a 10% equity package in lieu of continued investigation. Nicole read the email twice. They're sweating. Claire didn't respond immediately. Instead, she called Ryan herself. He picked up on the second ring, caught off guard. Claire. I found Marlowe. Silence. I know it's Belsky. I know about the payments. You want to explain it before your board finds out. You have no proof those payments weren't legitimate, he said, but his voice cracked halfway through. You paid your college roommate $183,000 for consulting on an app one personally watched you prototype in our living room. You think I don't remember? More silence. I don't want 10%, Claire said. What do you want? I want a vote. A what? You heard me, she said. I want a vote on company decisions. Any time capital moves or a strategic hire is made, I get a say. Ryan scoffed. That's insane. You're not a founder. I was your first investor. With my time, my labor, my body. Ryan didn't answer right away. Claire waited. Then he sighed. Let me talk to the board. She didn't say goodbye. She hung up. 1 week later, Nicole received the revised offer. 10% equity, full legal recognition as a strategic co-founder retroactive to 2020, and an observer seat on the board with non-binding input on hiring and capital decisions. It wasn't exactly a vote, but it was influence. And it came with a clause. If Claire ever spoke publicly about Marlowe or her surgery in the context of Ryan's company, the agreement would be voided. She signed. Not because she was done, but because this move put her inside the room. And she wasn't finished. Claire 2.0. Her condo looked different now. Not because of furniture or decor, but because Claire carried herself like someone who no longer waited for permission to be heard. She had 3 new clients booked for the next quarter. One of them was being courted by 2 of Evteka's competitors. Claire was now in a position to steer that courtship, strategically, quietly, thickly. This wasn't revenge. This was correction. This was presence. This was a woman learning how to be sharp without guilt, tactical without apology. Claire stood by the window one night, watching the city pulse beneath her, and whispered what she once thought she'd never say again. I'm not afraid of him anymore. And the truth was, she never had to be. 2 months after the board agreement, Claire was in the best shape, mentally and emotionally, that she'd been in years. Her days were full. Client calls, pitch meetings, brand audits, legal check-ins. She rarely thought of Ryan anymore, and when she did, it wasn't with pain. It was strategy. But control is fragile, especially in the startup world. And especially when secrets have a way of surfacing before you're ready for them to. The whisper. It started with a call from her first client at E2 Strategies. Claire, the founder said cautiously, I think someone from Evtech leaked your name to a reporter. Claire sat up straighter. What kind of reporter? Some guy from Tech Circuit Daily. He reached out to ask if I was working with you, and whether it was true you used to be married to Ryan Evans. He said he's writing a story about hidden hands behind rising tech CEOs. Claire blinked. Did he say what else he knows? No, just that. But he sounded confident. Like he already had most of the puzzle. Claire thanked her and hung up. Her mind was racing now. Not with panic, but with a razor-sharp awareness. Ryan was trying to get ahead of her. Or worse. Someone else had already started pulling the curtain back. Nicole's warning. He's trying to flip the narrative. Nicole said that night as they sat in her office, a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows glowing with the downtown skyline. If he gets the first word in, he can shape the story. Paint you as bitter. Make your contributions look small. Turn the kidney into a footnote. Claire stared out the window, jaw tight. We agreed, no public exposure. He did. You didn't. And if this story is happening anyway? Nicole paused. Maybe it's time to tell your side. Claire shook her head. I don't want to go viral. I want to be taken seriously. Then don't go viral, Nicole said. Go intentional. The narrative. Claire reached out to one journalist. Lena Ford, a business reporter she trusted from back in her PR days. Lena had written deep, nuanced profiles on female founders and labor exploitation in the startup space. She had a reputation for integrity and a long memory. Lena agreed to meet in person. Over iced green tea in a quiet cafe in Silver Lake, Claire told her everything. Not for sympathy, not even for attention, but to set the record straight. She brought receipts, dated files, time-stamped emails, investor decks with her edits, the medical bills from the surgery, the agreement signed by Ryan's legal team. Lena listened for over an hour, took notes by hand, and asked just one question when it was all over. Why now? Claire answered without hesitation. Because I've stopped asking if I'm allowed to take up space. The article. Tech Circuit Daily never published their piece. Lena's profile ran first. The headline was simple. The woman behind the empire. How Claire Evans built more than a startup and took it back. It was smart, elegant, full of facts, quotes, documentation. It didn't sensationalize the divorce. It didn't dwell on the surgery. It spotlighted Claire's work, her silence, and her decision to speak up, not for revenge but for recognition. It went live on a Tuesday morning. By noon, it had been shared over 18,000 times on LinkedIn. The fallout. Ryan called her that night. You blindsided me, he said. Claire was in her kitchen, chopping ginger for soup. She put the knife down. No, Ryan. I gave you a chance to tell the truth. You stayed silent. You made me look like a villain. You made you look like a villain. I just let someone point a light at it. He paused. The board's angry. Investors are asking questions. I've got a call with the general counsel in the morning. That sounds hard, Claire said flatly. You're enjoying this. No, she said and meant it. I'm finally not shrinking. That's all. Echo. The article opened floodgates. Not of scandal, but of solidarity. Claire began receiving messages from other women. Ex-co-founders, early contributors, silent spouses. Women who had helped build companies but were pushed out before the press releases. Before the headlines. Before the IPOs. You made me feel seen, one DM read. I didn't even know we were allowed to fight back, another wrote. Claire didn't respond to all of them. But she read every word. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe what Nicole had been saying since the beginning. She hadn't just survived something unjust. She had created a new blueprint. The call that changed everything. 3 weeks after the article dropped, Claire received a call from a well-known angel investor. Rebecca Lynn, a powerhouse in Silicon Valley, known for backing underestimated founders. I want to meet, Rebecca said. You've got perspective, fire, and influence. Let's talk about what you're building next. Claire looked out at the city through her office window. Her reflection layered over the skyline like she'd always belonged there. I'm listening, she said. And she meant it. Claire met Rebecca Lynn at a minimalist restaurant in West Hollywood. Glass walls, whisper-quiet service, and the kind of table you needed to book 2 months in advance unless your name unlocked calendars. Rebecca's did. She arrived exactly on time, no assistant, no entourage. Just her and a phone set to do not disturb. You look exactly like I expected, she said, shaking Claire's hand. Claire smiled. You don't. Rebecca laughed. Good. Let's skip the fluff. The proposition. Over soy-glazed salmon and jasmine tea, Rebecca laid it out. I'm not here to fund E2. You're doing fine without me. I'm here to talk about the next version of you. Claire leaned in, intrigued. You've got a platform now, Rebecca continued. And people are listening. Not just because of the article. Because you know something most people don't. Claire waited. You know what it's like to build in someone else's shadow. To fund an empire without a title. To give your literal body to a man who didn't value the soul attached to it. That struck a chord. Claire didn't flinch, but her pulse spiked. Rebecca leaned forward. I want you to launch a fund. A microfund to start. We back founders. Mostly women, mostly first-time operators, who've been behind the curtain too long. You vet them, mentor them, position them. I put up the capital. You bring the instinct. Claire blinked. You're serious. I've never been more. The conditions. Back at her condo that night, Claire couldn't sleep. She sat on the floor with a legal pad, the same one she used when she and Ryan were budgeting groceries and mapping business ideas in their kitchen. On the page she drew a triangle. Power, ownership, voice. Those were her non-negotiables now. Power wasn't about domination, it was about agency. No more acting behind the scenes. Ownership meant no diluted shares, no favor-based equity. Voice meant control over the narrative, especially for those who were always told to support quietly. If she launched this fund, it would live by those rules. It wouldn't just write checks. It would rewrite rules. Tech reacts. The PR storm hadn't settled entirely. Though Claire hadn't mentioned the Marlowe incident in the article, Ryan's board wasn't naive. Whispers of mismanagement and misappropriation trickled into Slack channels and investor forums. 2 key advisors resigned to pursue other ventures. One investor paused their next round. Claire hadn't even touched them. All she had done was exist in the truth, and truth had a gravity of its own. Ryan texted her late one night. You happy now? Claire stared at it for a moment, then replied, I'm not aiming for happy. I'm aiming for honest. A new foundation. 2 weeks later, the paperwork was signed. Claire officially became the managing partner of Third Wing Capital, a $5 million microfund with Rebecca's initial seed and 3 early LPs who believed in what Claire stood for. Her phone buzzed constantly now. Introductions, warm intros, founder decks, legal calls. But none of it felt overwhelming. It felt earned. One founder she interviewed had quietly exited a startup after discovering her co-founder trademarked the product in his name alone. Another had supported a family business for 5 years before being cut out of the expansion deal. Claire didn't just see them. She understood them. And when she offered funding, she didn't do it like a traditional VC. She said, here are my terms, and here's what I expect in return. Voice, honesty, and the willingness to stop asking for permission. They understood her too. The call that sealed it. Late one Thursday, Nicole called. I just got off with a reporter from TechCrunch. They're doing a follow-up piece. Claire leaned back in her chair. Let me guess. About EvTech. About you. And the rise of women who used to build quietly. Claire didn't say anything. Nicole paused. You ready for that kind of spotlight? Claire looked around her new office. On the wall hung a photo from her first E2 client's product launch. She'd been invited as a guest of honor. Next to it was a framed quote Nicole had given her, typed on plain paper. If they underestimate you, let them. Then show up anyway. Claire smiled. I'm more than ready. The invitation arrived unexpectedly in Claire's inbox. A sleek, minimalist design with embossed lettering. EvTech Annual Leadership Summit. Exclusive CEO Retreat. Claire stared at the screen, a mix of disbelief and calculated intrigue swirling inside her. She'd been officially recognized as a strategic partner, but this? An invitation to the core event where EvTech's top brass gathered. It was a power play wrapped in silk. She called Nicole. What do you think? Is this a trap? Nicole laughed. It's a trap dressed as a gift. But you know what? Sometimes you walk right into those, on purpose. Arrival at the summit. The retreat was held at a sprawling estate in Malibu, perched on cliffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The air smelled like salt and pine, The architecture was sleek glass and warm wood, all open spaces and natural light. It was the kind of place designed to impress CEOs and unnerve challengers. Claire arrived alone, dressed sharply but comfortably, carrying a leather briefcase instead of a purse. The reception desk handed her a personalized badge. Claire Evans, strategic partner and investor. As she walked through the vast, echoing hall, she felt eyes on her. Curious, wary, some outright hostile. Ryan's smug smile caught her first. "Claire," he greeted, voice syrupy. "Glad you could make it." She nodded, steady. "Wouldn't miss it." The opening session. Inside the main conference room, executives traded polite nods and guarded smiles. Ryan kicked off with a slick presentation, highlighting milestones, new hires, and exciting future opportunities. Claire listened carefully. The presentation was all surface shine, no mention of the Marlowe scandal or the investor tensions simmering beneath. But halfway through, Ryan dropped a curveball, a surprise announcement that Claire would lead a new initiative focused on strategic partnerships and early-stage investments. Murmurs ran through the room. Ryan smiled. "Claire's expertise has been invaluable. She's uniquely positioned to help us foster the next generation of startups, especially those aligned with our values." Claire kept her expression neutral but felt a spark of something fierce. This was her moment to take the stage. The private dinner. That evening, Ryan hosted a private dinner with the executive team and board members. The tension was palpable. Polite conversation masked undercurrents of rivalry. Claire found herself seated next to Graham Belsky, the man behind Marlowe Interactive. He smiled thinly. "Never expected you to show up here." She met his gaze evenly. "I'm full of surprises." The dinner was a chess match in disguise. Ryan tried to undermine her subtly, questioning her experience, her priorities, even her vision. But Claire held firm. She spoke with clarity and calm, outlining her plan for Third Wing Capital's upcoming funding cycle and how EvTech could benefit from a close partnership. By the time dessert arrived, several executives had shifted their stance, nodding thoughtfully. Late-night call. Back in her room, Claire's phone buzzed. "Nicole." "Good news," Nicole said. "I've been tracking the board chatter. They're impressed. Some want to ally with you, quietly for now." Claire exhaled. "So the game's changing." Nicole chuckled. "You bet. Ready for round 2. Claire smiled to herself. "Always." The morning after the retreat's private dinner, Claire woke early, her mind racing through the conversations and the subtle shifts she'd witnessed. The stakes had just been raised, and she was right in the middle. An unexpected proposal. Her phone buzzed before she'd even poured coffee. It was a message from Graham Belsky. "Meet me at the Garden Pavilion in 30 minutes. Need to clear the air." Claire's fingers hovered, then typed back. "All right. See you there." She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew avoiding him wouldn't help. The Garden Pavilion. The pavilion was a serene space overlooking the ocean, a quiet oasis among the retreat's chaos. Graham was already there, arms crossed, looking less guarded than at dinner. "I'll be direct," he said. Marlowe Interactive was a mess. But it wasn't just me or Ryan. There were bigger forces. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Explain." He sighed. "Investors, board members, people who wanted Ryan to fail or pivot in ways that would squeeze you out entirely. The payments. Part of a shell game to keep funding flowing without scrutiny." Claire's jaw tightened. "So this was a setup." Graham nodded. "A toxic power play. And you caught it." She studied him. "Why tell me this now?" "Because if you want to be part of this world, you need allies. Not enemies." The new alliance. That afternoon, Claire met privately with Ryan and 2 senior board members. The conversation was tense but honest. Ryan admitted his mistakes but insisted on moving forward, for the company's sake. Claire laid out her terms. Full transparency on partnerships, a seat at the decision-making table, and the freedom to expose any questionable dealings without retaliation. The board members exchanged looks, some skeptical, others resigned. Ryan finally said, "Fine. You want a seat? You got it." Crossing personal lines. Later that evening, Claire received a text from Ryan. "Dinner. One last time before this all changes." Claire hesitated, then replied, "We have a lot to settle." At the restaurant, the air was thick with unsaid words. Ryan said quietly, "I never stopped caring." Claire looked him in the eye. "And I never stopped fighting." They talked long into the night, about broken promises, lost trust, and the future neither could fully predict. Claire's world was a pressure cooker. Between managing Third Wing Capital, navigating board politics at EvTech, and her complicated history with Ryan, every day felt like a high-stakes chess match. One misstep and everything could collapse. The New Deal. The board had finally approved Claire's proposal, a pilot partnership program between EvTech and Third Wing Capital. The goal: identify under-the-radar startups and give them seed funding, mentorship, and market access. Claire was proud, but the approval came with strings attached. Ryan wanted veto power on every decision. She knew that would only slow progress. A secret meeting. Late one night, Claire received an anonymous tip. Someone from EvTech was leaking confidential information to a competitor. She traced the source to a trusted executive, someone she'd once considered an ally. When confronted, the executive denied everything, but the evidence was damning. Emails, deleted files, and recorded calls. Claire realized the stakes were even higher than she thought. Ryan's ultimatum. Ryan cornered Claire in the elevator the next morning. "We can't keep this up," he said quietly. "Either you back off or I do. This partnership, your fund, it's tearing the company apart." Claire's heart pounded. "I'm not backing down. Not now." Ryan's eyes flashed. "Then don't expect me to make it easy." The board meeting. Tensions erupted at the next board meeting. Ryan accused Claire of overstepping, of using the fund to undermine his leadership. Claire countered with data, growth metrics from Third Wing's portfolio startups, new partnerships, investor interest. The room was split. Voices rose. Alliances formed and fractured in real time. By the end, the board agreed to a temporary truce, but the underlying war was far from over. Breaking point. That night, Claire sat alone on her balcony, city lights twinkling below like distant stars. She texted Nicole, "I'm at my breaking point." Nicole replied instantly, "Good. That means you're still fighting." Claire smiled, wiped a tear, and set her jaw. The battle was just beginning. Claire woke to the hum of the city just outside her window, but inside a storm was brewing, one that could shift everything. The Investor Summit. Third Wing Capital was hosting its first major investor summit. The room was packed with eager entrepreneurs, potential backers, and industry insiders. Claire stood at the podium, ready to prove not just her fund's worth, but her own. Her speech was raw and honest. "I'm not here because of a kidney donation. I'm here because I chose to reclaim my power, my voice, and my future. These startups, these founders, they're not asking for charity. They're asking for a chance." The crowd erupted in applause. Unexpected support. After the summit, a surprising ally approached. Mark Reynolds, one of EvTech's more conservative board members. "I've been watching," he said quietly. "You're doing what this company needed. Someone to push from the outside." Claire nodded. "I appreciate that." He leaned in. "You're gaining traction. Don't let Ryan or anyone else slow you down." Ryan's shift. Word of the summit and Claire's growing influence reached Ryan. He called her that evening. "Impressive speech," he admitted. "You're not the same woman I married." Claire replied, "I'm better." He hesitated. Maybe we can find a way to work together. For real." The proposal. Claire drafted a new collaboration plan. A joint venture between EvTech and Third Wing Capital to incubate startups with shared resources and expertise. She presented it to the board, emphasizing transparency, equal say, and mutual respect. The mood in the room shifted, this time cautiously optimistic. Step forward. At a private dinner celebrating the tentative partnership, Claire looked around the table. Ryan raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said. Claire clinked her glass with his, feeling a complex mix of hope and wariness. Because while the future was uncertain, one thing was clear. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was leading. The tentative alliance between Claire and Ryan promised progress, but beneath the surface, old wounds and mistrust still festered. Claire knew that to truly move forward, she had to confront the past, and the people who hadn't forgotten. The board's doubts. Days after the joint venture announcement, whispers of doubt spread through Evteka's corridors. Some board members questioned whether Claire's fund was more about personal revenge than business. At a closed-door meeting, one senior advisor said bluntly, "Is this about the company's future or settling scores?" Claire sat calmly, but inside the accusation stung. She responded, "If fighting for transparency and fairness is a score to settle, then I accept that challenge." The leak. Then the news broke. A major leak from within Evtek had revealed sensitive financial data. The media speculated about internal sabotage, and fingers pointed in every direction. Claire's name surfaced. Accusations hinted she might have orchestrated the leak to weaken Ryan's position. Confronting the accusers. Determined to clear her name, Claire demanded an internal investigation. She gathered evidence and confronted board members who'd spread rumors. "Transparency means everyone's accountable," she said. "Including me." Her steadfastness earned grudging respect, but the damage was done. Trust was fragile. Ryan's warning. Ryan called her late one night. "This could ruin everything you've built," he warned. "You need to decide what matters more, the company or your vendetta." Claire's voice was steady. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for change. And that means facing every hard truth." A public statement. Claire released a carefully crafted statement, addressing the leak and reaffirming her commitment to Evtek and Third Wing Capital's missions. The media response was mixed, but her supporters rallied, reminding the industry that real change was never easy. The fallout from the leak had unsettled the board, but Claire saw an opportunity hidden within the chaos, a chance to build unexpected alliances and strengthen her position. Reaching out, Claire invited Maya Rivera, a rising star in tech advocacy and founder of a nonprofit supporting women entrepreneurs, to a private lunch. Maya's energy was electric, her reputation impeccable. "I've heard about Third Wing," Maya said, sipping her iced tea. "You're shaking up an old boys' club." Claire smiled. "That's the plan." Maya leaned forward. "Let's talk partnership. Your fund and my network combined could change the game." The partnership pitch. Back at Evtek, Claire presented a proposal for a strategic alliance with Maya's nonprofit, aiming to create a pipeline of diverse founders and resources. Some board members were skeptical, but others, especially Mark Reynolds, saw the potential. Ryan's reaction. Ryan was less enthusiastic. "This is risky," he said during a strategy session. "Non-profits don't generate revenue." Claire countered. "This isn't just about revenue. It's about building an ecosystem that sustains growth." The tension between them simmered, but Claire was undeterred. Building momentum. The new alliance quickly bore fruit. Third Wing hosted a workshop series led by Maya's team, attracting dozens of talented founders who had previously struggled to find funding. Claire personally mentored several promising entrepreneurs, deepening her connection to the community she was determined to uplift. A surprise visit. One afternoon, Ryan stopped by Claire's office unannounced. "I want to see these founders in action," he said. Claire agreed, arranging a showcase where several startups pitched live. Ryan watched silently, then nodded. "Maybe you're onto something," he admitted. The new alliance was gaining momentum, but as Claire's influence grew, so did the resistance, both inside and outside Evtek. The backlash. Several traditional investors began pulling back from Third Wing Capital, uneasy about the fund's activist stance and the attention it was drawing. Claire received pointed calls warning her that she was rocking the boat too hard. Media scrutiny. A tech journalist published a scathing article questioning Claire's motives, portraying her as a woman driven more by personal vendetta than business savvy. The piece dredged up her past with Ryan, the kidney donation, and the messy fallout. Claire felt the sting but refused to respond publicly, choosing instead to focus on her work. Boardroom battles. At the next board meeting, Ryan's allies escalated their campaign to sideline Claire. They proposed stricter oversight of Third Wing Capital's investments and demanded quarterly performance reports with greater detail. Claire saw it as an attempt to box her in. Standing her ground. During the meeting, Claire pushed back hard. "I'm accountable to our investors and the founders we support," she said firmly. "But innovation requires trust and flexibility, not micromanagement." Her words struck a chord with several board members, though others remained unconvinced. An unexpected ally. Mark Reynolds again surprised Claire by voicing his support. "Claire's vision is what EvTech needs right now," he said. "We have to stop treating her like an outsider and start collaborating." The room quieted, but the division was clear. The growing tensions between Claire and Ryan's faction reached a boiling point, threatening to unravel everything Claire had worked for. The boardroom showdown. The next board meeting was more than just routine. It was a reckoning. The agenda was packed with motions to limit Claire's authority and redefine the relationship between Third Wing Capital and EvTech. Claire arrived prepared, documents and data backing every point she planned to make. The vote. Voices clashed as the debate heated up. Ryan spoke first, questioning Claire's decisions and accusing her of risking the company's stability. Claire responded with steely calm, presenting undeniable evidence of Third Wing's impact and potential. When the vote was called, the room fell silent. Victory and warning. Claire won the vote, securing her position and authority. But Ryan's final words were a chilling reminder. This isn't over. Personal consequences. That evening, Claire sat alone, the weight of victory heavy on her shoulders. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You're getting too close. Step back or face the consequences." The ominous message lingered in Claire's mind, but it didn't deter her. If anything, it strengthened her resolve. Standing firm. Claire knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more challenges, more battles, but she was ready. With a deep breath, she sent a reply. "I'm not stepping back. This is just the beginning." Rebuilding trust. In the weeks that followed, Claire focused on rebuilding bridges, both professional and personal. She reached out to Ryan not with anger, but with a tentative offer of partnership. Ryan surprised her by accepting. A shared vision. Together, they worked on refining the joint venture, blending Claire's innovative vision with Ryan's experience. The startup incubator began to thrive, attracting diverse entrepreneurs and fresh ideas. Personal growth. Claire also found peace within herself. The scars from her past, the betrayal, the heartbreak, became sources of strength rather than pain. She reconnected with friends and family, rebuilding the support network she needed. Looking ahead. On a sunny morning, Claire stood on the balcony of her office, overlooking the city skyline. The future was uncertain but filled with promise. She smiled, ready to lead not just a company but a movement.